I never thought I'd be one of those people airing their dirty laundry online, but here I am. I guess I'm hoping someone out there can give me some perspective because I'm drowning over here. I'm not sure where else to turn. My name's Jeff, and my wife's name is Lisa. We've been married for 8 years. We've got 2 great kids, Molly, who's 6, and Jake, who's 3. Life's not glamorous, but it's stable. I'm a mechanic at a local shop, and Lisa's a dental hygienist. We met through mutual friends at a barbecue. She was outgoing, confident, and I was smitten. We got married a couple years later, and everything felt right for a long time. But over the past few months, things have gone from normal to downright weird. Lisa's been pulling away, being cold, and making excuses to avoid spending time with me. It's like she's always irritated with me for no reason. I'm not a perfect husband, but I don't think I've changed that much. At first, I chalked it up to stress. We've both got busy jobs, the kids can be a handful, and life gets in the way sometimes. But I started feeling this nagging sensation that there was more to it. Turns out, my gut wasn't lying. It all started with her phone. Lisa's never been one to guard her phone like it's a national secret, but lately, she's been acting like it's glued to her hand. Every time I'd walk into the room, she'd quickly close whatever app she was on or flip her phone face down. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid, controlling husband, so I let it go. Then, the late nights at work started. She'd always worked a pretty consistent schedule, but now she was coming home later and later. "Oh, we're swamped at the office," she'd say, with this forced, casual tone that made my skin crawl. I didn't question it at first because, again, I didn't want to seem paranoid. But every time she came home late, she'd jump in the shower right away, like she couldn't wait to wash the day off. I remember one night in particular. She came home late, again, claiming she'd had to stay behind to help clean up after a big procedure. I asked her how it went, trying to keep the conversation light. She snapped at me. "What is this, an interrogation? I told you I was at work." Her tone was sharp, defensive, and it caught me off guard. We barely spoke the rest of the night. I started noticing that Lisa was dressing up more for work, too. She used to just throw on her scrubs and maybe a little makeup, but now she was putting on perfume, curling her hair, and wearing those tight-fitting scrubs that I know she bought because they make her look good. When I joked about how she was putting in extra effort lately, she gave me this annoyed look and muttered, "It's not like I'm dressing up for you." That one stung point one night, when she was in the shower after yet another late night. I couldn't help myself anymore. I grabbed her phone. I told myself I wasn't going to invade her privacy, but my gut was screaming at me that something was up. When I opened it, my suspicions were confirmed. Lisa's been texting someone named Chris. At first, I thought maybe it was just a coworker, but as I scrolled through the messages, I realized I was way off. The texts were flirty, downright sexual, and filled with inside jokes I didn't recognize. Stuff like, "Last night was amazing, can't stop thinking about you," or "When are we getting that hotel room again?" My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I might pass out. I kept scrolling, my hands shaking, and the further I went, the worse it got. They'd been talking like this for months, meeting up for lunches that were clearly more than just lunch. They had a whole routine. Chris would book the room, and she'd sneak out during her long work breaks. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to throw her phone across the room, punch a wall, scream, something. But instead, I just sat there, paralyzed by what I'd found. I didn't know what to do with myself. It felt like the world had just collapsed around me, and I was stuck there, in the wreckage. I reread those texts over and over, hoping that maybe I'd misunderstood, that it wasn't as bad as it looked. But no, it was exactly what it looked like. They'd been meeting up regularly, having sex in hotel rooms and, apparently, even in his car. I sat there for what felt like hours, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of it all. How could she do this to me? To us? We've got kids. A whole damn life together. And here she was, screwing around with some guy from her office like it didn't mean anything. The worst part? The way she talked about me. In one of the texts, Chris had asked her, "How does Jeff not notice anything?" And she'd responded, "Oh, he's clueless. I can get away with anything." That one broke me. I thought we were partners, a team. And here she was, making me out to be some dumb, blind idiot who couldn't see what was right in front of him. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't know how. I spent the whole night awake, my mind racing, rehearsing different ways to call her out. When she came downstairs the next morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table, her phone in front of me. "Who's Chris?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though I could feel the anger boiling under the surface. Her face went pale for a split second before she caught herself. "What are you talking about?" "I went through your phone last night. I know everything." My voice cracked, and I hated how weak I sounded, but I couldn't help it. "I know you've been seeing him." At first, she tried to deny it, acting offended that I'd even dare look at her phone. "Why are you invading my privacy? That's such a violation, Jeff." "A violation? You've been cheating on me for months, Lisa. Don't try to turn this around on me." She stared at me for a moment, probably deciding whether or not to keep lying, before she finally shrugged. "Okay, fine. I've been seeing Chris, but it's not what you think." That was the first time I laughed since this whole thing started. "Not what I think. You're screwing him in hotel rooms. How is that not what I think?" She rolled her eyes, like I was being dramatic. "It's just sex, Jeff. You and I haven't been connecting for a long time. I needed something different." Her coldness hit me like a truck. This was the woman I'd built a life with, the mother of my kids, and she was acting like what she'd done was no big deal. Lisa didn't apologize. Not once. Instead, she stood there, arms crossed, explaining how I'd let things slip in our marriage, how I was too focused on work, how we drifted apart. She even had the nerve to tell me, "You don't understand what it's like to be married to someone who's so checked out." Checked out? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I worked my ass off every day to support our family. Sure, I wasn't the most romantic guy in the world, but I never thought that gave her an excuse to cheat. She kept talking, throwing out excuse after excuse, like she'd rehearsed them all. "We've been in a rut for a long time, Jeff. You never pay attention to me. You haven't even noticed how unhappy I've been." Her words cut deep. I thought we were just going through a rough patch, but apparently to her, that was a reason to start sneaking around with another man. It didn't matter how many excuses she gave, though. The fact remained. She cheated. She lied. And now I didn't know what to do. Her words stung, each one leaving its own scar, but I just sat there, staring at her, trying to wrap my head around it all. She was standing in front of me, acting like this whole thing was a minor inconvenience, like I was blowing it out of proportion. I felt numb, like I'd been hit by a car but hadn't quite felt the pain yet. I wanted to yell, throw something, but I couldn't even move. I just kept thinking about how casually she dismissed everything. "It's just sex, Jeff. Just sex." As if that made it any less of a betrayal. As if screwing someone else, lying to my face, and laughing about how clueless I was didn't destroy everything we had built. I stood up from the table, the room spinning a little as I did. "So, what now? You just expect me to sweep this under the rug, like it never happened?" She didn't even flinch. "I don't know, Jeff. I wasn't planning on you finding out. It's not like I was going to leave you. It's done now." Her tone was cold, indifferent, like she wasn't talking to the man she'd been married to for 8 years, but a stranger. I couldn't believe it. "I need some space," I muttered, turning toward the door. I didn't even care where I was going. I just needed to get out of there. "Fine," she said, without even looking up. "But you need to get over it. It's not like this is the end of the world." The end of the world? No, maybe not. But it sure as hell felt like the end of my world. I drove around for hours, my mind racing in circles, trying to make sense of everything. Every time I thought about those texts, or the way she dismissed it all, I felt my blood boiling. How could she not see what she'd done? How could she treat our marriage like it was nothing? I pulled into some random parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, hit something, anything to get the rage out. But I couldn't. I just sat there, my mind replaying every moment of our marriage, trying to figure out when things had gone so wrong. Had I been blind this whole time? Maybe I had been too wrapped up in work. Maybe I had missed the signs. But then again, she didn't have to cheat. She could have talked to me, told me how she felt, instead of sneaking around with this Chris guy like I didn't matter. And then there were the kids. I couldn't stop thinking about them. Molly and Jake. They were so innocent in all of this, and now their lives were going to be turned upside down because their mom decided to throw our marriage away for some cheap thrills. How was I supposed to explain that to them? I felt like a failure. I had failed as a husband, and now I was failing as a father. How could I protect them from this? From the fallout of Lisa's actions? I eventually went back home that night, though I wasn't sure what I was going to say. I walked in to find Lisa sitting on the couch, watching TV like nothing had happened. Like everything was fine. I couldn't stomach it. I went straight upstairs, packed a bag, and headed back down. Lisa didn't even look up until I was by the door. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice flat. "I'm leaving," I said. "I can't be here right now. I need time to figure this out." She rolled her eyes, annoyed. "Oh, come on, Jeff. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like I'm asking for a divorce. We can get through this if you'd stop being so emotional." I stopped in my tracks. Emotional? You've been screwing around with another man for months, Lisa. I think I'm allowed to be emotional. She sighed, like I was inconveniencing her. "I already told you, it's over with him. Just stop making a big deal out of nothing." A big deal out of nothing? That was all I needed to hear. I walked out the door without another word. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house with her any longer. I ended up at my buddy Dave's house. He's been my best friend since high school, and I knew I could count on him to give me a place to crash for a few nights. When I showed up at his door, bag in hand, he didn't even ask questions. He could tell something was seriously wrong. Once I was settled in, I told him everything. About Lisa, about the affair, about how cold she'd been when I confronted her. Dave sat there, shaking his head the whole time. "Dude, I'm so sorry," he said. "I never would have guessed Lisa would do something like that. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't even know where to start. Part of me wants to try to fix it, for the kids. But the way she acted, it's like she doesn't even care." Dave didn't sugarcoat it. "Jeff, you deserve better than that. She's treating you like shit, and she doesn't even feel bad about it. You can't just go back and pretend this didn't happen." I knew he was right. But the idea of tearing my family apart, of not seeing my kids every day, felt like a nightmare. I wasn't sure I could handle that, even if Lisa didn't deserve me. The kids were the hardest part. Every time I thought about them, my heart shattered a little more. How was I supposed to explain this to them? How do you tell a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old that their parents aren't going to be together anymore? Dave helped me come up with a plan. "Just be honest, man. But don't drag them into the details. They don't need to know about the affair, at least not now. Just tell them that you and Lisa aren't going to be together anymore, but that you both still love them." I knew that was the right approach, but it didn't make it any easier. Molly, especially, was going to take this hard. She's a sensitive kid, and she loves her mom so much. I didn't want her to think any of this was her fault, or that we didn't love her and Jake anymore. I hadn't even talked to Lisa about it yet. We still hadn't figured out how we were going to tell the kids, or how we were going to co-parent. Everything was so raw, so messy, and I didn't know where to start. After a few days at Dave's, I knew I had to go back home and talk to Lisa. We couldn't avoid this conversation forever, and I couldn't live in limbo. When I walked into the house, Lisa was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. It was infuriating how normal she was acting, as if our marriage wasn't crumbling around us. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "So, are you done with your little temper tantrum?" I gritted my teeth. "We need to talk." She finally looked up, sighing dramatically. "What now, Jeff? I thought you said you needed space." "I do, but we need to figure out what happens next. This marriage, I don't think I can stay in it." For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her expression. Fear? Panic? I couldn't tell, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Are you seriously considering divorce over this?" she asked, incredulous. "You can't be serious." "I am serious, Lisa. I can't live like this. You cheated on me, and you don't even seem sorry. I don't know if I can forgive you." She stood up, crossing her arms. "You're being ridiculous, Jeff. It's not like I'm leaving you for him. I already told you. It's over. We can move on from this if you just stop being so dramatic." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. Dramatic. That's all she thought this was, a little drama. But to me, It was everything. It was the end of the life I thought we had done. I stood there, staring at her, feeling like I didn't even recognize the woman in front of me. The woman I thought I married would have been devastated to know she hurt me like this. But this version of Lisa? She just wanted to sweep it all under the rug and move on like nothing had happened. You keep saying I'm being dramatic, I said, my voice low, trying to keep it steady. But you don't get it. You broke my trust, Lisa. You stepped outside of our marriage, lied to me for months, and now you're acting like I'm the problem. She rolled her eyes again, leaning against the kitchen counter, arms still crossed like she was bored of the whole conversation. Jeff, I already told you. It's over with Chris. I needed something different for a while, but it didn't mean anything. You're making this a bigger deal than it has to be. We have kids together. You can't just throw that away. That was the first time she mentioned the kids since I'd confronted her. And it wasn't even out of concern for them. It was just another excuse, another reason for me to stay, to suck it up and keep going like nothing happened. But I couldn't. Not anymore. The weight of everything, her betrayal, her indifference, the coldness in her voice, was crushing me. I couldn't live like this, in a marriage where I was constantly wondering if she'd do it again. Wondering if she even cared about me, about us, at all. I'm not the one who threw it away, I said, meeting her eyes. You did that the moment you decided to cheat. And now, I have to think about what's best for me, and for the kids. Because staying in this, it's not healthy. Not for any of us. For the first time, Lisa didn't have a snappy comeback. She just stood there, her face unreadable, and for a moment, I thought maybe she was starting to realize how serious this was. But then she said, "So, what do you want? A divorce? Is that what you're saying?" The word hit me hard, even though I knew it was coming. Divorce. It felt like a final nail in the coffin. Part of me had hoped that somehow, this conversation would end differently, that she'd apologize, beg for forgiveness, something that would make me believe we could fix this. But looking at her now, seeing the coldness in her eyes, I realized that wasn't going to happen. I don't know yet, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But I can't stay here. Not right now. That night, after another long, tense silence, I decided to stay with Dave a little longer while I sorted things out. I couldn't make a decision this big on the spot, especially not with Lisa still acting like she'd done nothing wrong. I called a lawyer the next day. It felt surreal, sitting in my truck outside Dave's place, talking to someone about the possibility of ending my marriage. I explained the situation, trying to keep it together as I told her about the affair, the texts, and Lisa's complete lack of remorse. The lawyer was calm, professional, and she didn't sugarcoat anything. "You need to protect yourself, Jeff," she said. "If you're seriously considering divorce, we'll need to talk about custody arrangements, assets, all of that." Custody arrangements. The thought of not seeing my kids every day tore me apart. I knew that if we divorced, things would never be the same. Molly and Jake wouldn't understand why their parents weren't living together anymore, why they had to split their time between two homes. The idea of sharing custody with Lisa, of having to navigate holidays and weekends and all the other complications, felt like a nightmare. But at the same time, staying in this marriage felt like a slow death. I couldn't keep living in a house full of lies, pretending everything was fine for the sake of the kids. I had to think about what kind of example I was setting for them. If I stayed, I'd be teaching them that it was okay to accept disrespect, to settle for less than they deserved. After I hung up with the lawyer, I sat in my truck for a long time, staring out the window, trying to imagine what my life would look like on the other side of this. It was terrifying, the idea of starting over, of being a single dad, of figuring out who I was without Lisa. But deep down, I knew it was what I had to do. When I went back to the house to talk to Lisa again, the tension between us was thick. She was still acting like this whole thing was an inconvenience, like I was making a bigger deal out of it than I needed to. But I had made up my mind. "We need to talk about what's next," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I called a lawyer. Her eyes widened, and for the first time since all of this started, I saw a flash of panic. "A lawyer? Are you serious?" "I am," I said, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "We need to figure out how this is going to work, for the kids, for both of us." She stared at me, speechless for a moment. Then, her face hardened. So that's it? You're just giving up on us? I almost laughed at the irony. I'm not the one who gave up, Lisa. You did, the second you decided to cheat. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. I could see the anger in her eyes, the frustration, but there was something else there, too. Maybe the realization that she couldn't manipulate her way out of this one. What about the kids? She asked, her voice quieter now. We'll figure it out, I said. I'll always be their dad, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure they're okay. But I can't stay in this marriage, not after everything. For the first time, Lisa didn't argue. She just stood there, arms crossed, looking at me like she didn't know what to say. And with that, I walked out. Not just out of the house, but out of the marriage, out of the lies, out of the life I thought I had with Lisa. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But as I drove away, I felt a strange sense of relief, like I was finally free. Free from the betrayal, free from the constant wondering, free from the weight of a marriage that had been broken long before I ever realized it. Divorced, or almost divorced, at least. I'm still in the process of working out custody and all the legal stuff, but emotionally, I'm done. And honestly, I feel lighter. Don't get me wrong, it still hurts like hell. The betrayal, the lies, the way she treated me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. But in the end, I realized something important. You can't make someone love you. You can't make someone be the partner you deserve. No matter how hard you try, if they don't respect you, if they don't care enough to be honest with you, then it's not worth holding on to. It's better to walk away with your dignity intact than to stay in something that's slowly destroying you. My advice? Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. And don't let anyone make you feel like your emotions are too much or that you're overreacting. You deserve honesty, respect, and love. Don't settle for less than that. Life's too short. Anyway, that's my story. Thanks for reading, if you made it this far. I don't know what the future holds, but for now, I'm just focusing on my kids, on healing, and on figuring out what comes next. Wish me luck.